What's going on, guys? Derek here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. Today, you know what time it is. It's Monday, so we're here to do the waivers. With 2 weeks of the NFL season coming to a close, we're starting to get a good feel for which players were one-week wonders and which ones are going to be regular contributors in the offense. We'll get into exactly which players those are and more, but before we do, let's get into the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat of the day was out of all running backs in week 1, which running back spent the most time behind the line of scrimmage. The correct answer was actually Alvin Kamara. At the time of recording, nobody had yet gotten that one right, but let's get into today's stat of the day. Today's question is, through the first 2 weeks, which running back leads all in rushing yards over expectation? So once again, that's through the first 2 weeks of the NFL season, which running back leads in rushing yards over expectation? Leave your answer in the comments section down below. We'll be happy to let you know who wins in tomorrow's video. Also, guys, consider signing up for our in-season package. Not only will you get access to waivers like this, we have ordered priority, suggested fab budgets. You'll also get our top trade targets, air yard trade model results, droppable player list, and more. So if that interests you, go to our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com, sign up, and become a member today. With that out of the way though, let's hop right into the video, and I'm going to put up on screen the running backs here with the high percentage of ownership. At the very top, of course, we have James Robinson. If you can find him on your waivers whatsoever, I would waste a top priority on him. He currently is owned in just 62% of leagues, and he's coming off of a very dominant performance. We saw in week 1, he had a stranglehold over all the touches and snaps from this backfield, and in week 2, they leaned on him even more. He finished the day with 16 carries, 102 rushing yards, an average of 6.4 yards per attempt. He scored a touchdown and was even involved in the receiving game, had 3 receptions for just 18 yards. This is very promising production from the young running back, and I would say even from this point forward, he should be in flex consideration each and every week. If you are able to find that on your waiver wire, that is certainly worth a top pick, but he is owned in a ton of leagues, but we do have to shout him out nonetheless. Behind him, we have Nyheim Hines. He is owned in 79% of leagues. This is a player who has the upside to be like a 2019 Austin Eckler, a running back heavily used in the receiving game in a backfield that had lost Marlon Mack, so his involvement should go up. The results didn't necessarily translate on the field this week, but that by no means should be a reason that we completely avoid him. We would be comfortable using a pick on him. If you want to know the exact fab, go to our website, we have it listed there. Behind him, we have Benny Snell coming in at 54% ownership. He is going to be in what looks like a timeshare out of Pittsburgh. This is between him and James Conner. While they are splitting time, it's unlikely that either one of them should be trusted in your lineups as anything more than a flex player, but James Conner has an extensive injury history, so if I'm betting on which player is going to be available for the offense down the stretch, it definitely will be Benny Snell, and we've seen in flashes him perform pretty well. The final high ownership percentage running back we have is Malcolm Brown, coming in at over 85% owned. He did injure his hand in the last matchup, but that may not keep him out all that long. It was promising to see him get a high amount of touches in back-to-back games, that being double-digit carries, 18 in week 1, 11 in week 2. So if he is available on your waiver wire, try to get him on your team. With that, let's move over to the lower ownership percentage players. To lead this list, we have Dion Lewis, obviously taking over for the injured Saquon Barkley, who we are assuming at this point did suffer a torn ACL. We do not have the MRI as of yet, but the early indications do say that is the case. If that is the case, then Dion Lewis would instantly be a running back and flex consideration each and every week. He's not going to have anywhere near the upside of Saquon Barkley. Dion Lewis, he's on the wrong side of his career. He was never all that talented to begin with, but he does have a very similar skill set to that of Saquon Barkley, meaning he can run and he can catch, which is valuable if he's getting the volume. The upcoming schedule for the New York Giants will lighten up eventually soon, which means Dion Lewis could be in flex consideration to be in your lineup very shortly. So, if you do have your top waiver claim, he is the player who I would put atop the list. Behind him, we have Mike Davis, a very similar situation with Mike Davis as we have with Dion Lewis. Mike Davis presumably will be taking over for the injured Christian McCaffrey. We have even less information on the severity of Christian McCaffrey's injury, and we're not even 100% sure exactly if Mike Davis will be the bell cow behind him. So there is more risk in taking a shot on this pick, but we may learn more information before waivers clear. Behind Mike Davis, we have Chase Edmonds coming in at 32% ownership. I am a bit concerned with the backfield of Arizona. I'm not sure they're going to have the top 5 upside like we predicted heading into the season. Reason being is is that the target split didn't look exactly as we had projected. Last season, the targets were evenly distributed between the wide receivers and the running backs as well. It appears that the projected target market share that was going to the running back position is now more heavily weighted towards the wide receivers, a la DeAndre Hopkins. And if that is the case, if we're seeing a lack of volume in the receiving game for the running backs out of this backfield, that is overall going to impact their floor and ceiling. So I don't think that they're going to have top 5 upside, but Chase Edmonds is a very talented running back, one injury away from being a workhorse, and that is very valuable, and coming in at 32% ownership, you really can do no wrong. Behind him, we have Joshua Kelly of the LA Chargers. He had a massive workload in week 2. He is the clear north-south rusher for the LA Chargers. Behind Austin Eckler, it looks like it's going to be a 1A, 1B type situation. Joshua Kelly has also been used in the passing game, so you know this is a running back who does have some workhorse potential. If anything were to happen to Austin Eckler, I think Joshua Kelly would be a solid RB2 for the remainder of the season. And right now, he is only owned in about 26% of leagues, so if he's available on your waiver wire, definitely get him on your roster. Behind him, we have Jerick McKinnon, scored once again in week 2. And with the injury to Raheem Mostert, Jerick McKinnon may find himself getting more snaps than we originally intended. Coming in at 19% ownership, that's very valuable, and you may not have to waste any sort of waiver on him. So keep an eye out for him. If you're thin at running back, look to get Jerick McKinnon on your roster. Lastly, we have good old Adrian Peterson. I don't believe he is going to be the long-term solution for any rosters, but with DeAndre Swift dropping a game-winning touchdown last week and Adrian Peterson continuing to get the volume in week 2, he is worth owning. He certainly isn't a player who we would recommend thrusting into the lineup, especially with the type of splits that we're seeing out of this backfield, but regardless, he is worth owning 100%. He should be owned in all leagues. Right now, he's currently only owned in about 47% of leagues, so if you are one of those 53% of leagues, try to get Adrian Peterson on the team. We are now finished with running backs, so let's move over to wide receivers, and there are only 2 high ownership percentage wide receivers. That's Preston Williams coming in at 61% ownership, and Mike Williams coming in at 51% ownership. Both 2 wide receivers heavily involved in their offenses, not the first option in their offenses, but also offenses that are ascending and pretty strong in the passing game. For Preston Williams, it is positive for his situation to note that Devontae Parker has been a bit banged up through the first 2 weeks. If Devontae Parker does miss some time, that would instantly skyrocket the value of Preston Williams, and that is something we very well could see in the coming weeks. As for Mike Williams, we saw the offense move much more smoothly under Justin Herbert. The coaching staff has already came out and said if Tyrod Taylor is 100%, he will be the starter, but from what we saw, Justin Herbert is the future, and it won't take very long for the rest of the team to see that. Moving over to the guys most likely available on your waivers. To lead this list, we have Anthony Miller, available in over 60% of leagues. Anthony Miller, the clear second option behind Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson also a player who seems to be a bit disgruntled. If Allen Robinson ever were to be traded, Anthony Miller would be the top receiving option in this offense. He doesn't need to be the top receiving option in this offense in order to be start worthy. I think down the stretch there will be several games that Anthony Miller should be in the lineup, but this offense is still getting their footing underneath them, so we'll give them time and allow Anthony Miller to develop on our bench. Even though he is available in over 60% of leagues, we feel he should be owned in every league, so he's going to lead this list. Behind him, we have N'Keal Harry, also available in about 60% of leagues. Harry now has 13 receptions over his last 2 contests, led by Cam Newton. Cam Newton and him are beginning to develop a chemistry, and 15.2 points in PPR leagues. That is very, very promising. His next week's matchup is against the Las Vegas Raiders, where we can also expect them to perform very similarly. So N'Keal Harry is definitely a player who could likely have, once again, another strong performance. Behind him, we have Corey Davis, who's only owned in about 27% of leagues, so that means he should be available for the majority of you out there. With the A.J. Brown injury, Corey Davis is going to be leading this team from the wide receiver position, and we're not exactly sure the extent or how long A.J. Brown will be out for. Behind him, we have Michael Pittman, who appears to be trending towards being the target leader on this offense. We know Paris Campbell did go down with an injury. He was looking like he had the best connection with Phillip Rivers prior to that. Michael Pittman is currently only owned in about 15% of leagues, and just know that this is more of a speculative ad, one that you should add and just leave for the bench as you wait to see this situation develop, but still a talented player on an offense that definitely should see some improvement in the coming weeks. Behind him, we have Russell Gage, who's currently owned in about 20% of leagues. If we were going strictly based off of production, Russell Gage would definitely be ranked higher. He has 15 receptions through the first 2 weeks of the season, has over 160 receiving yards, and even scored in last week's contest. My only concern or long-term concern with Russell Gage is that there are just too many weapons on this offense, and I just don't expect that all of the totals for the games that they're in to be as high as they were in week 1 and week 2 when they faced Seattle and Dallas. But still, the production does warrant an add, and he is only owned in about 20% of leagues. Behind him, we have Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who seems to be the player that we are taking a liking to behind Davante Adams. Davante Adams was forced out with an injury last week, which means the opportunity for MVS is going to increase from here. He's the type of player who doesn't need a ton of volume in order to produce, a big play specialist, a tall guy as well, so we can see him used in the red zone if necessary. All positive signs for his overall ability and opportunity moving forward. Currently, he is only owned in about 17% of leagues, so the majority of you out there certainly can own him on your team. Moving on, we have Chase Claypool, currently only owned in about 7% of leagues. This is more of an add on talent. We know that this team and roster is not short of weapons from the receiver position. It would need maybe an injury or two for him to play consistently, but from what we've seen in limited opportunities, he has shined, and we want to get players on our bench that are loaded with talent and have a possible path to being a top 20 contributor. Chase Claypool does have that. He would need an injury for something like that to happen, but from a talent perspective, it's all there. The final receiver we have is going to be Brandon Ayuk, and I know the results didn't really translate from the opportunity. He had 3 targets, converted that into 2 receptions, only was able to compile 21 receiving yards, which isn't very promising for a receiver with as much opportunity as he had heading into week 2, but remember, he is a rookie. The offensive weapons from a receiver position are very banged up on this offense, so his opportunities will continue to come as he continues to develop. Right now, he is only owned in about 22% of leagues, so the odds are most of you out there can land him on your roster. We're going to move over to tight ends, and there really is only one with a high ownership percentage. That's Dallas Goedert, coming in at 76% ownership. Don't look at the box score last week and see 4 for 30 and be disappointed. He received 8 targets, and 8 targets at the tight end position is massive. Any tight end getting that amount of volume is surely going to finish inside of the top 12, and Dallas Goedert certainly is lined up to do so. Leading the list of low ownership percentage tight ends is Jonnu Smith. No surprise there. He scored 2 touchdowns in this week's contest. We definitely expected him to have a good match, but nowhere near expected him to score twice in this game. He exceeded our expectations, is now on a tear to start the season, and is in contention to be a top 10 tight end for the remainder of the season. Make sure you get him on your team even if you already own one tight end. You could potentially use him for trade fodder down the road, and considering he's only owned in 39% of leagues, most of you out there have a chance to do that. The next tight end we have is Dalton Schultz. Definitely should be owned by any TE needy team. He is owned in a mere 1% of leagues and had 10 targets on the day, converted that into 9 receptions for 88 yards. He is taking over for the injured Blake Jarwin and seems to be in line to be a major contributor in this offense from this point forward. Behind him, we have Chris Herndon, who is owned in about 40% of leagues. He is a player who, in my opinion, is trending down, but still worth a speculative add. I see him as a matchup-based tight end too for the remainder of the season, so definitely one of those streaming candidates. I don't think this offense has enough firepower to have him locked in as an every week start. Even with the lack of weapons that the New York Jets have, his involvement in the offense is just not consistent enough for you to trust him each and every week, regardless of matchup. But still, if you do need a tight end or you're in a deeper league, look for Chris Herndon. He's available in about 60% of leagues. Behind him, we have Jordan Reed, who did score twice. This seems to be more of a short-term rental, but short-term rentals do have their place, especially in the tight end landscape, where we typically only trust guys or start them on a week-by-week basis. Jordan Reed, if the other weapons like George Kittle are not going to play in next week's matchup, Jordan Reed is certainly a player you could plug and play and expect some solid results. He is currently only owned in about 6% of leagues, so 94% of you out there do have the ability to land him on your roster. The final player at the tight end position we have is Logan Thomas, currently only owned in about 10% of leagues, which means 90% of you out there have the ability to get him. Don't be afraid by the box score. I know he didn't have a start-worthy performance last week, but he did receive 9 targets. Like I said, any tight end receiving that amount of volume is going to be in flex consideration each and every week. Logan Thomas is on an offense that is a bit lacking weapons, and the inexperience at quarterback from Haskins could force him to rely more on the tight end position, and Logan Thomas is going to be the main benefactor of that. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. We went through all the waivers. If you want to know how much fab to spend on each player, go to our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. Link as always in the description. But if you did enjoy this video, how about hitting that like button? If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.